A new beginning often arrives disguised as a simple realization, a quiet recognition that the life you've been living no longer reflects who you're becoming. It's not about escape or starting over blindly. It's about choosing a direction that finally honors your inner truth. You feel a quiet shift inside you, a pull toward a life that feels more aligned, more intentional, more times you, asterisk. This chapter of your life doesn't demand perfection. It asks for willingness. The willingness to explore parts of yourself you've ignored, the courage to leave behind patterns that dimmed your spirit, and the openness to step into unfamiliar territory with clarity instead of fear. A new start isn't something you wait for. It's something you claim with presence. You begin to see that even small decisions can lead to profound transformation. What once felt impossible now feels reachable, because you're no longer moving from pressure, you're moving from purpose. Every step forward becomes a declaration of growth, every choice a brushstroke painting the next version of your life. A new beginning is not a restart, it's a rise, and this audiobook is your invitation to step into that rise, with intention, awareness, and quiet strength. Ready to begin? A new beginning doesn't announce itself through dramatic moments. It's felt as a quiet shift deep within. It starts as a subtle awareness that the life you've been living no longer matches the person you're becoming. This inner change may feel gentle, but it carries immense power. It's the silent pull toward a different path, one shaped not by habit, but by intention. You begin sensing that something within you is ready to evolve, even if you don't yet know where it will lead. This shift often begins with discomfort, not the kind that breaks you, but the kind that nudges you awake. You start noticing that old routines feel heavier than before, and familiar patterns drain your energy instead of grounding you. It's the mind's way of signaling that your growth has outgrown your surroundings. This awareness doesn't demand immediate action, but it refuses to be ignored. As you pay attention, you notice your thoughts changing shape. You begin imagining possibilities you never allowed yourself to consider. The vision of a new life doesn't arrive fully formed. It appears in fragments, a feeling, a desire, a spark. These fragments slowly weave together, revealing a direction that feels both unfamiliar and deeply right. The inner shift brings clarity in unexpected ways. You start questioning the roles you've been playing and the weight you've been carrying. Some responsibilities feel misplaced, some dreams feel outdated, and some fears feel unnecessary. It becomes clear that part of you is ready to rise, but another part is still holding on to the old. This tension marks the beginning of transformation. A new beginning doesn't ask you to reject your past. It invites you to outgrow it. The inner shift shows you what no longer fits. It highlights habits that limit you, beliefs that restrict you, and relationships that keep you stagnant. This awareness isn't meant to create conflict. It's meant to create clarity. Growth demands honesty, and honesty begins with noticing what you've avoided. You start feeling drawn toward behaviors that nourish your energy rather than deplete it. Small acts of self-respect begin replacing old patterns of self-neglect. You find yourself choosing silence over noise, intention over impulse, meaning over distraction. These subtle decisions accumulate, gradually reshaping your identity. The inner shift often brings a new relationship with time. You no longer rush through your days. You start noticing their texture. Moments that once passed unnoticed now feel significant. You sense opportunities in the pauses, lessons in the stillness, and wisdom in your own intuition. Time becomes something you collaborate with, not something you chase. This shift also brings a new way of seeing yourself. You stop defining your identity by past mistakes or outdated stories. You begin recognizing strengths you overlooked and possibilities you dismissed. A gentle confidence grows within you, not arrogance, but assurance. You start trusting your ability to navigate change, even if the path ahead is unclear. The inner shift is often accompanied by a subtle detachment from old fears. They don't disappear instantly, but their grip loosens. You stop treating fear as a barrier and start treating it as information. Instead of shrinking, you observe. Instead of resisting, you reflect. Fear transforms from a threat into a teacher, guiding you toward deeper understanding. You begin valuing alignment more than acceptance. Before, you may have shaped yourself to fit expectations, but now you feel pulled toward authenticity. The need to impress fades. The need to honor your truth grows. This change is not rebellious, it's liberating. You start living for clarity, not validation. As this shift deepens, your emotional landscape evolves. You respond less from old wounds and more from present awareness. You become slower to react, faster to reflect. Emotional triggers lose some of their intensity because your sense of self is no longer tied to external situations. Peace becomes a choice, not a coincidence. The inner shift often reveals areas of your life that need closure. You start recognizing which chapters are complete, even if you haven't formally ended them. This realization isn't painful, it's peaceful. Closure stops being something you demand from others and becomes something you create within yourself. You release out of clarity, not resentment. As you grow, your priorities begin to rearrange themselves. What once felt urgent no longer holds the same weight. What once seemed impossible now feels attainable. You start craving depth, meaning, and sincerity. The material becomes secondary to the emotional, and the external becomes less important than the internal. This new awareness invites you to examine your inner dialogue. You notice the tone of your thoughts, the doubt, the pressure, the criticism, and you begin replacing it with compassion. You start speaking to yourself the way you wish others had spoken to you. This shift in self-talk becomes the foundation of your new beginning. With time, the inner shift becomes more recognizable in your choices. You stop chasing distractions that once numbed you. You stop returning to environments that diminish you. You stop tolerating situations that contradict your growth. Boundaries form naturally, not from defensiveness but from self-respect. Your environment begins responding to this internal change. Some connections feel deeper. Some drift away. Some opportunities expand. Others dissolve. Instead of resisting these changes, you begin accepting them as part of your unfolding. You stop forcing outcomes and start aligning with what feels true. You realize that a new beginning doesn't require dramatic change. It grows from consistency, the daily commitment to show up for yourself with honesty and awareness. Transformation isn't sudden, it is steady. It grows with every decision that honors your evolution. The inner shift also brings a newfound appreciation for uncertainty. What once felt frightening now feels open. You begin trusting that the unknown is not a void but a doorway. You stop expecting life to predict itself and start embracing the mystery as part of your journey. As this shift stabilizes, you feel lighter. The past loses its grip. Expectations lose their weight and pressure loses its urgency. You begin experiencing your life instead of managing it. This openness allows space for new ideas, new connections, and new possibilities to find you effortlessly. The inner shift becomes unmistakable. You feel it in your decisions, your behaviors, your emotions, and your energy. You begin living from intention rather than habit. And in that alignment, you recognize the undeniable truth. The new beginning you were waiting for has already started within you, quietly, steadily, beautifully. Renewal is often misunderstood as something that depends on new surroundings, new people, or new opportunities. But real transformation begins long before anything changes externally. It starts quietly inside you, in the way you think, feel, and interpret your life. When your inner world shifts, everything around you naturally follows. Renewal is an internal awakening, not an external rearrangement. You begin noticing the first signs of renewal when your inner dialogue changes. The thoughts that once controlled you lose their authority, and a gentler voice starts to emerge, one that questions old patterns instead of blindly repeating them. This shift may be subtle at first, but it forms the foundation of your rebirth. Renewal starts where awareness deepens. External change cannot sustain itself without inner transformation. You can switch environments, relationships, or routines, but unless your inner state evolves, the same cycles reappear. Renewal requires inspecting the beliefs that shaped your past and choosing which ones deserve to remain. Freedom begins when you stop letting old narratives guide your present. The mind often tries to convince you that life must change before you can. But renewal teaches the opposite. Your inner world must evolve first, because your outer world is only a reflection. When you shift your perspective, your reality starts to match your new awareness. You stop waiting for better days and begin creating them from within. As renewal takes root, your emotional patterns transform. You respond differently to situations that once overwhelmed you. What previously provoked you no longer carries the same power. Emotional maturity becomes the soil for growth. Renewal is not about suppressing emotion, but learning to understand it without letting it dictate your direction. Inner renewal often begins with honesty, with admitting what isn't working and acknowledging the parts of yourself you've avoided. This honesty is not harsh, it's liberating. It clears space for clarity. You stop lying to yourself about what you want, what hurts you, and what you've outgrown. Truth becomes your starting point. As you grow internally, you stop fighting the old version of yourself. Renewal doesn't require self-rejection. It requires self-awareness. The past self was only operating from what it knew. Instead of judgment, you meet your old patterns with compassion. This shift creates room for transformation to occur without resistance. You begin paying attention to the subtle sensations within the tension in your body, the heaviness in your thoughts, the ease in certain choices. These signals guide your renewal more accurately than logic ever could. You start trusting your intuition, recognizing it as the voice of your inner alignment. Renewal thrives in that trust. When renewal starts within, your priorities change naturally. You begin valuing peace over validation, growth over familiarity, and authenticity over approval. This reshapes the way you spend your time, the conversations you allow, and the energy you protect. You no longer chase what drains you, you choose what strengthens you. The inner work of renewal often feels invisible to others, but deeply tangible to you. People may not see your transformation immediately, but you feel it in your presence, in your clarity, in the way you carry yourself. Renewal is not a performance, it's a shift in being. The validation you once craved becomes unnecessary. As your inner world changes, your relationship with uncertainty transforms as well. You stop fearing the unknown and begin engaging with it. Renewal teaches that uncertainty isn't danger, it's possibility. You start trusting that life supports those who align with truth, even when the path ahead isn't predictable. Inner renewal brings a new patience to your journey. You stop rushing results or forcing progress. You understand that growth is more like unfolding than achievement. Each layer reveals itself in its own timing. Instead of pushing, you allow. Instead of demanding, you observe. Renewal flows through patience. The more you evolve internally, the clearer your boundaries become. You stop tolerating situations that conflict with your peace. You no longer allow anyone, including your old self, to pull you into cycles that contradict your growth. These boundaries are not walls. They are gateways to a healthier version of your life. Renewal deepens your connection with yourself. You begin spending more time in silence, reflection, and intentional solitude. These quiet moments no longer feel empty. They feel nourishing. You discover that the answers you seek are already within you, waiting for stillness to be heard. Renewal turns silence into guidance. Your values become more defined as renewal unfolds. You stop compromising your truth to maintain comfort. You start choosing what aligns with your integrity, even if it requires letting go of what feels familiar. Renewal brings courage, not loud, aggressive courage, but steady, inward confidence that strengthens your steps. As your inner landscape changes, your perspective on challenges shifts too. You stop viewing obstacles as signs to quit and start seeing them as invitations to evolve. You respond with resilience instead of resistance. Renewal doesn't remove difficulty. It enhances your ability to rise through it without losing your center. The deeper you go within, the more you recognize how interconnected your mind, emotions, and choices truly are. Renewal teaches that healing one part of yourself influences all others. A single moment of awareness can dissolve years of unconscious repetition. Inner shifts create outer transformation in ways that feel almost effortless. Renewal becomes your natural state. You stop clinging to past versions of yourself and embrace the flow of becoming. The future no longer feels intimidating because you are no longer tied to the past. Your identity becomes fluid, adaptive, and expansive, shaped by awareness rather than memory. You realize that renewal is not a destination but an ongoing relationship with yourself. Each day brings new lessons, new clarity, new opportunities to adjust and rise. You no longer fear change because you understand it as part of your unfolding. Renewal becomes the rhythm of your inner life, and in the heart of this renewal, you discover the truth. Transformation begins not when the world shifts, but when you do. Everything outside you rearranges itself to match your inner alignment. Renewal is the spark, the foundation, and the beginning, and it always starts within. Stepping into a new version of yourself requires recognizing the mental walls you've carried for years. These limits were not created by your potential, but by your past experiences, your environment, and the stories you absorbed without question. As awareness grows, you begin to see these limits as illusions, boundaries that only existed because you believed in them. The first act of expansion is acknowledging that you are bigger than the walls you once lived inside. Old limits often disguise themselves as self-protection. They whisper that staying the same is safer than trying something new. But comfort is not the same as peace, and safety is not the same as growth. When you examine these limits closely, you find that many were formed during moments of fear, not clarity. By observing them without judgment, you take away their authority over your future. Expansion begins when you stop treating your past reactions as your present identity. The habits that once defined you lose power when you become aware of them. You start noticing how often you hesitate, how often you choose doubt over courage. Instead of criticizing yourself, you use these moments as evidence that you're becoming more conscious. Awareness always precedes transformation. Stepping into life without old limits means letting go of the belief that you need permission to grow. You no longer wait for perfect timing, external approval, or guarantees. You begin moving in alignment with what feels true rather than what feels safe. This shift empowers you to act from intention instead of fear, from possibility instead of hesitation. As you break through old constraints, your relationship with failure changes. Instead of seeing it as proof that you shouldn't try, you see it as an essential part of expansion. Failure becomes information, not identity. You learn from it, adjust, and move forward. The fear of being wrong no longer stops you because you stop attaching your worth to outcomes. Letting go of limits also means questioning the expectations placed upon you. You start identifying which responsibilities are authentic and which ones you inherited unconsciously. Many of your limits were shaped by trying to be what others needed. As you reclaim your inner authority, you stop bending yourself to fit outdated roles. You begin choosing the life that aligns with your truth. Your sense of possibility expands as you stop defining yourself through your old identity. You see that you are capable of more than you previously allowed yourself to imagine. This shift is not about arrogance. It's about recognizing potential that was always there, but hidden beneath layers of fear. You begin dreaming from belief instead of limitation. Stepping into life without old limits creates new patterns of courage. Small acts of bravery begin to shape your days, speaking honestly, trying something unfamiliar, trusting your intuition. Each act reinforces the foundation of your expansion. You stop waiting for confidence to appear and start building it through action. As your limits dissolve, your emotional world becomes lighter. You stop carrying the weight of old insecurities that once dictated your choices. You understand that fear doesn't disappear, it simply loses control. You learn to move with fear instead of being controlled by it. This partnership with uncertainty becomes a new source of strength. Your interactions with others transform as your inner limits fade. You stop shrinking yourself to maintain harmony. You no longer silence your truth to avoid discomfort. You speak from clarity, not defensiveness. Relationships either rise to meet your growth or naturally drift away. In both cases, you maintain your inner alignment. Stepping into life without old limits often brings unexpected opportunities. As your energy shifts, life responds differently. You attract experiences you were once too afraid to pursue. You notice pathways where you used to see barriers. Possibility becomes your new lens, and momentum follows your openness. Your sense of identity becomes flexible rather than fixed. You stop clinging to labels you once used to define yourself: shy, overthinker, broken, unconfident. These labels dissolve as you act in ways that contradict them. Identity becomes something you shape, not something you inherit. You become the artist of your becoming. Stepping beyond limits requires trusting yourself more than your fears. You begin relying on intuition, the quiet guidance that always knew your direction. This trust deepens each time you choose clarity over doubt, truth over comfort. You stop outsourcing your sense of direction. Your inner voice becomes your compass. As you expand, you stop mistaking familiarity for stability. You recognize that staying small is not safety, it is stagnation. Growth demands movement, and movement requires discomfort. You stop viewing discomfort as danger and start seeing it as evidence that you're entering new territory. Expansion becomes a conscious choice. Old limits fade when you understand that you are not bound by your previous experiences. The person who faced those moments was only operating from what they knew then. Now you know more. Now you see more. You stop letting older versions of yourself dictate the future of the version you're becoming. Stepping into life without old limits also brings a new relationship with responsibility. You take ownership of your choices without blaming your past. Accountability becomes empowerment, not punishment. You realize that growth is not about control, it's about engagement. You participate in your life with intention, not avoidance. This expansion leads to a new way of managing challenges. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, you look for solutions with a broader perspective. You stop interpreting obstacles as signs of failure. You begin treating them as parts of the journey, invitations to rise higher, think deeper, and act wiser. Challenges stop shrinking you, they strengthen you. The more you move without your old limits, the more aligned your life becomes. You stop forcing paths that no longer resonate. You stop holding on to situations that restrict your growth. You begin gravitating toward environments that support your evolution. Alignment becomes a natural outcome of inner expansion. Your energy changes as your limits fade. You carry yourself with quiet confidence. You speak with grounded clarity. You make decisions without second-guessing your worth. This confidence is not loud, it is steady. It doesn't come from proving anything to others, it comes from recognizing your own inner expansion. Stepping into life without old limits reveals the truth. that those limits were never real. They were learned. What is real is your capacity to grow beyond them. What is real is your ability to rewrite the narrative. What is real is your power to choose who you become next. And with each step forward, you move deeper into the limitless version of your life. The part of you ready for change doesn't awaken through pressure or force. It awakens through realization, the understanding that you can no longer ignore the call within you. This inner calling grows quietly, asking you to look beyond your routines, your limitations, and your familiar patterns. With each acknowledgement, a new sense of possibility begins to rise, signaling that something inside you is preparing to evolve. As this awakening deepens, you start noticing subtle shifts in how you think and feel. Situations that once felt acceptable begin to feel restrictive. Choices you used to tolerate now feel misaligned. This is not discomfort meant to punish you. It is discomfort meant to guide you. The part of you ready for change moves you toward what feels true, even if that truth feels unfamiliar. Awakening requires noticing your inner signals, your emotions, your intuition, and your lingering desires form a quiet language that reveals what you're meant to grow into. When you pay attention, you begin understanding what you've suppressed. Change doesn't begin with big actions. It begins with listening to the whispers of your inner world. This awakening brings clarity about what no longer resonates with your future self. You start detaching from habits that drain you, thoughts that limit you, and influences that misguide you. The part of you ready for change doesn't rely on dramatic decisions. It works through small realizations that eventually reshape the direction of your life. As your readiness grows, your relationship with fear transforms. Fear no longer feels like a barrier. It becomes a messenger, revealing where you're still holding back. You begin seeing fear as a teacher, not an enemy. Instead of running from uncertainty, you examine it, understand it, and move through it with greater self-trust. Awakening means recognizing how deeply conditioned your past reactions have been. You see how many of your choices were driven by avoiding discomfort rather than seeking truth. As this awareness expands, you stop living reactively. You begin acting from alignment instead of instinct, from clarity instead of habit. This shift becomes the backbone of your transformation. The part of you ready for change thrives in honesty. When you allow yourself to admit what you truly want, the process accelerates. You stop minimizing your desires to maintain safety. You stop reducing your potential to fit past expectations. Honesty opens the door to change, and acceptance allows you to walk through it. Awakening also reveals the importance of emotional responsibility. You begin owning your feelings without blaming others for them. This responsibility frees you from dependence on external factors. You realize that your inner state is created by your inner choices, not by the world around you. This understanding makes change possible, sustainable, and authentic. The more you awaken, the more clearly you see the difference between your inner voice and your conditioned voice. One pushes you toward fear, while the other guides you toward evolution. You learn to identify which voice carries truth, and you choose the one that expands your life instead of shrinking it. Awakening the part of you ready for change doesn't mean discarding your past self. It means integrating your past lessons. You begin honoring the experiences that shaped you, not as definitions, but as stepping stones. This integration creates peace within you, making space for growth instead of inner division. This stage of awakening also brings a deeper sense of self-trust. You stop doubting your ability to change and start recognizing your resilience. You remember the challenges you once overcame and realize that you've carried strength you rarely acknowledged. This recognition becomes fuel for the journey ahead. As change begins internally, your perception of your environment transforms. You start seeing opportunities in places you once overlooked. You discover possibilities in situations that previously felt stagnant. The world hasn't changed, your awareness has. Your expanded perception allows you to see potential where you once saw limits. Awakening invites you to release the expectations that once shaped your decisions. You stop seeking approval before taking steps toward your truth. You understand that external validation cannot guide your growth. This freedom allows you to honor who you're becoming without apologizing for who you used to be. This internal shift also reveals the importance of protecting your energy. You become more selective with the conversations you engage in, the people you spend time with, and the environments you allow yourself to remain in. Your awakening makes you aware of what nourishes you and what drains you. You choose accordingly. As your readiness for change expands, you develop a new relationship with patience. You understand that growth is a gradual unfolding, not a sudden breakthrough. Instead of rushing the process, you stay present with it. This patience brings a sense of peace, allowing you to evolve without forcing outcomes. Awakening also teaches you to release the pressure of knowing every step in advance. You begin trusting that clarity will arrive as you move. You stop waiting for certainty before acting. This trust becomes a bridge between who you are and who you're becoming. It allows change to flow with grace instead of fear. The part of you ready for change encourages you to express parts of yourself you once kept hidden. You begin embracing your creativity, your intuition, your sensitivity, your courage, dimensions of yourself that were overshadowed by old conditioning. This expression feels natural, not forced. It reflects the self you've always had within you. As your inner readiness grows, you become more aligned with your purpose. You begin sensing what direction your life wants to move toward, not because you plan it perfectly, but because you feel it deeply. This alignment creates momentum. Each step forward feels intentional rather than random. Your awakening also deepens your connection to presence. You stop living in the past. You stop projecting into the future. You begin inhabiting the now, the only place where change truly occurs. In this presence, your choices become clearer, your emotions become understandable, and your actions become aligned. Awakening the part of you, ready for change, is not about becoming someone new. It's about uncovering the version of yourself that has always existed beneath fear, conditioning, and doubt. The readiness has always been there. Now, you finally allow it to lead. Choosing a path that reflects your truth begins with understanding the difference between who you are and who you were taught to be. Throughout your life, you absorbed expectations from family, society, and past experiences. These influences shaped your decisions, sometimes guiding you away from your authentic desires. To align with your truth, you start peeling back these layers, discovering what genuinely resonates with your inner self. As you reconnect with your truth, you begin noticing how often you made choices out of fear rather than clarity. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of disappointing others. These fears once directed your steps, but the more you recognize them, the less control they hold. You begin allowing your choices to rise from your inner wisdom, not your fear-based conditioning. Choosing your truth requires slowing down enough to hear your inner voice. This voice is subtle, quiet, and often overshadowed by external noise. Yet, it holds the most accurate guidance for your life. When you give it space, you start sensing what feels aligned and what feels forced. Alignment becomes a compass that points you toward your authentic path. As you explore what reflects your truth, you start examining the values that shape your decisions. Some values were inherited, not chosen. Others were internalized from past wounds. You distinguish between borrowed beliefs and genuine principles. This clarity helps you create a life built on intention rather than inherited patterns. The path that reflects your truth may not align with what others expect from you. This realization can feel uncomfortable at first, because external acceptance once served as a source of security. But as you deepen your connection with your inner self, You recognize that true peace comes from living in alignment, not from pleasing others. Authenticity becomes more valuable than approval. Choosing your truth transforms your relationship with discomfort. Instead of avoiding it, you begin using it as a signal. Discomfort often indicates misalignment, a cue that something needs to shift. When you pay attention to these signals, you stop forcing yourself into paths that drain you. You redirect your energy toward choices that feel expansive and honest. As your truth becomes clearer, you begin identifying the environments that support your growth. You notice which spaces inspire you, challenge you, or suffocate you. You gravitate toward environments where your authenticity can thrive. These choices reshape the course of your life more deeply than any external achievement could. Choosing a path that reflects your truth also requires acknowledging the desires you once dismissed. Many of these desires were buried under self-doubt or practicality. When you allow them to resurface, you gain insight into who you are becoming. These desires are not fantasies. They are reflections of your deepest potential calling for expression. You begin recognizing that living your truth is not a sudden leap. It's a series of intentional steps. Some steps are bold, others subtle, but each carries significance. Every aligned choice, no matter how small, shifts the direction of your life. Progress becomes a gradual unfolding rather than a dramatic transformation. As you choose your truth, you develop a relationship with your intuition that grows stronger with each decision. You no longer dismiss your inner knowing as impulsive or unrealistic. You begin trusting the quiet certainty that arises from within. This trust becomes a guiding force, helping you navigate paths you once felt uncertain about. Your truth-based path requires boundaries firm, unapologetic boundaries. You stop allowing people, situations, and expectations that conflict with your authenticity to dictate your choices. These boundaries are not barriers, they are forms of self-respect. They protect your growth and keep you aligned with your evolving identity. Choosing a path aligned with your truth brings a sense of clarity to your life. You begin seeing the difference between what feels forced and what flows naturally. This clarity simplifies decisions that once felt overwhelming. When you follow what feels genuine, confusion fades and direction becomes evident. The more you align with your truth, the more you outgrow roles and identities that no longer fit. You stop clinging to versions of yourself created from survival or compliance. Letting go of these outdated identities can feel unfamiliar, but it frees you to express your real self without restriction. This freedom becomes the foundation of your transformation. Choosing your truth also means embracing vulnerability. Being authentic exposes you, but it also strengthens you. Vulnerability becomes a sign of alignment, a signal that you're no longer pretending or performing. When you choose authenticity over perfection, you step into a more grounded and powerful version of yourself. As you walk the path that reflects your truth, you become more aware of the opportunities that resonate with your purpose. You no longer chase what isn't aligned simply because it looks appealing or impressive. You start pursuing experiences that nourish your soul rather than inflate your ego. Purpose replaces pressure. Your truth-based path invites deeper relationships. The more authentic you become, the more you attract people who value your essence rather than your performance. You find relationships built on honesty, resonance, and mutual respect. The connections rooted in your truth feel lighter, freer, and far more meaningful. Choosing your truth also reshapes your understanding of success. Instead of measuring success through comparison or external achievements, you begin measuring it through alignment. Success becomes living in a way that honors your inner knowing. This shift liberates you from the standards that once limited you. As you continue walking in alignment, you realize that your truth evolves with you. What was aligned in the past may not reflect your present identity. This evolution is not inconsistency, it is growth. You allow your path to shift as you deepen your understanding of yourself. Flexibility becomes part of your authenticity. Choosing your truth gives you a sense of inner stability that external circumstances cannot shake. You no longer crumble when faced with uncertainty because your foundation is internal, not situational. This inner stability becomes your anchor in times of change, guiding your decisions with confidence and clarity. Choosing a path that reflects your truth is an act of liberation. It frees you from the weight of expectation, the pull of old patterns, and the pressure of conformity. It reconnects you with your essence, the part of you untouched by fear or conditioning. And as you walk this path, you step into the life that was always meant for you. Leaving behind what no longer supports you begins with recognizing the weight you've been carrying. Some of that weight came from old beliefs, outdated identities, and habits built from survival rather than growth. These parts of your life once served a purpose, but now they silently restrict your expansion. Understanding this opens the door to release not out of anger, but out of awareness. As you examine what no longer supports you, you start seeing how much of your life was shaped by obligation instead of alignment. You held onto situations because they were familiar, not because they were healthy. You stayed in patterns because they felt predictable, even if they drained your energy. Letting go requires honesty, and honesty reveals where your loyalty was misplaced. Releasing old attachments does not mean rejecting your past. It means acknowledging that evolution demands space. Growth requires room, and room comes from removing what crowds your inner world. This process may be uncomfortable, but it clears the path for new perspectives, new opportunities, and new versions of yourself waiting to emerge. You begin noticing how certain habits no longer match who you are becoming. These habits may have helped you cope or survive in earlier chapters, but now they limit your progress. When you stop feeding these patterns, they lose their influence. This shift marks the beginning of emotional freedom, allowing you to respond from clarity instead of conditioning. Leaving behind what no longer supports you often means letting go of outdated narratives. Stories you once told yourself, "I'm not capable, I don't deserve better, this is just who I am," lose their credibility as your self-awareness grows. These narratives served as anchors, but they also kept you tied to versions of yourself you have outgrown. Releasing certain relationships becomes part of this journey. Not every bond is meant to last through every stage of your evolution. Some connections fade because their purpose is complete. Others end because they thrive on the version of you that no longer exists. Letting go is not an act of cruelty, it is an act of self-respect. You also begin distancing yourself from environments that drain your energy. Certain places once felt comforting because they matched your old identity. But as you evolve, these environments feel restrictive. You start seeking spaces that nurture growth, clarity, and authenticity. Your surroundings become a reflection of your inner expansion. Leaving behind what no longer supports you requires releasing the pressure to maintain roles that no longer fit. Roles shaped by expectation, responsibility, or habit can become cages disguised as commitments. When you step out of these roles, you reclaim your freedom to redefine yourself on your own terms. This release process reveals how tightly you once held on to control. You tried to manage every outcome, protect every emotion, and maintain stability through force. Now you realize that control was never a form of strength, it was a response to fear. Letting go of control opens the door to trust, allowing life to unfold naturally. As you release what doesn't support you, guilt often arises. You may feel guilty for choosing yourself, for setting boundaries, or for stepping away from familiar dynamics. This guilt is evidence of old conditioning, not evidence of wrongdoing. Over time, the guilt fades as you recognize that honoring yourself benefits every part of your life. Letting go invites you to confront your fears of emptiness. Many people cling to the familiar because they fear the space left behind. But that space is not emptiness, it is possibility. It is the blank canvas necessary for building a life that truly reflects your inner truth. This shift transforms the unknown into something valuable rather than threatening. Leaving behind what no longer supports you also frees your emotional energy. You stop investing in conflicts that drain you, expectations that suffocate you, and patterns that diminish you. Your energy begins to flow toward growth, healing, and expansion. This redirection creates momentum toward your future self. As you detach from old burdens, your sense of identity becomes clearer. You stop defining yourself through your wounds, your fears, or your past roles. You begin seeing yourself as someone capable of renewal, someone who deserves alignment, someone who is allowed to evolve. This clarity reshapes the way you show up in the world. You learn that letting go is not a single decision, it's a continuous practice. Each day offers new opportunities to release thoughts, emotions, or attachments that no longer serve your well-being. This practice strengthens your ability to stay present, to choose consciously, and to live intentionally. Leaving behind what no longer supports you deepens your understanding of boundaries. You start recognizing where your energy leaks, where your attention is exploited, and where your peace is compromised. Setting boundaries becomes natural, not defensive. It becomes an expression of self-awareness and self-respect. This release brings a new sense of emotional balance. You stop reacting automatically to triggers that used to dominate your responses. As you detach from the past, emotional patterns lose their grip. This balance brings clarity, and clarity allows you to navigate life with a grounded, stable presence. Letting go also uncovers strengths you didn't know you had. When you stop relying on outdated habits or relationships for comfort, you discover your own resilience. You realize that you can handle change, face uncertainty, and build new foundations. This self-discovery becomes one of the most empowering parts of releasing the old. As you leave behind what no longer supports you, your vision for the future becomes sharper. You begin seeing what you want, not what you've been conditioned to want. This vision motivates your next steps, guiding your decisions with purpose instead of pressure. You move toward the life that matches your inner expansion. Your journey of release also brings gratitude. You become thankful for what served you, even if it no longer fits. You honor the lessons, the experiences, and the chapters that shaped you. Gratitude softens the release, allowing you to move forward without bitterness or regret. Leaving behind what no longer supports you is an act of liberation. It frees your mind, opens your heart, and clears your path. It aligns you with the truth of who you are becoming. And as you step forward, you create space for a life that reflects your authenticity, a life that honors your growth, your clarity, and your evolution. Momentum often begins in the smallest, most unremarkable moment, the instant you decide to move despite uncertainty. That first brave step doesn't need to be perfect or dramatic. It only needs to be real. Even the lightest action carries energy, and that energy begins shaping your direction. What starts as a small shift becomes the spark for everything that follows. Taking a brave step disrupts the cycle of hesitation. The mind may try to convince you to wait, rethink, or retreat, but once you move, the pattern breaks. You begin discovering that progress comes not from thinking endlessly, but from choosing courage in motion. Action becomes a teacher, revealing what planning alone could never show. This initial step exposes how much strength you've been hiding behind fear. Once you cross that threshold, you realize the fears that held you back were built from anticipation, not reality. Moving forward turns imagined obstacles into manageable experiences. The step you feared most becomes the foundation of your confidence. A brave step has the power to shift your internal narrative. Where you once believed you weren't ready, capable, or worthy, you now see evidence of growth. This shift in self-perception is the true beginning of momentum. When your story about yourself changes, your life begins to match that new story. Momentum grows when you release the pressure to leap. Consistent, honest steps carry more impact than rare bursts of intensity. You learn to appreciate progress that is steady rather than dramatic. Each step builds on the last, forming a rhythm that strengthens your commitment to your path. As momentum builds, doubt still appears, but it no longer paralyzes you. You've already proven that movement is possible, even in uncertainty. This proof becomes a shield against hesitation. You begin trusting your ability to navigate challenges instead of avoiding them. Doubt becomes background noise rather than a roadblock. A single brave step often reveals new pathways you couldn't see before. Opportunities appear because you're in motion, not because circumstances suddenly become easier. Action illuminates potential. You begin noticing possibilities that were invisible when you stood still. Momentum expands your vision. Building momentum teaches you how interconnected your actions are. One step affects the next. Every choice shapes your state of mind, and your state of mind shapes your next decision. This chain reaction creates a powerful cycle, one where growth feeds more growth. Small steps accumulate into meaningful transformation. As you continue moving, your confidence deepens. Confidence is not built through imagining success. It is built through experiencing your own strength. You realize that you're capable of far more than you once believed. This realization reinforces your courage, making each new step feel more natural. Momentum shifts your relationship with failure. Instead of fearing mistakes, you start using them as signals. A misstep no longer feels like a collapse, it feels like information. You adjust, learn, and move forward with greater clarity. Failure loses its power to stop you because movement has become your default response. Taking that first step also helps you understand how much energy you once wasted on overthinking. The mental weight of staying still often feels heavier than taking action. When you move, your mind becomes clearer, your emotions lighter, and your direction more defined. Movement becomes a form of mental freedom. Momentum strengthens your resilience. The more you commit to action, the more you build the capacity to keep going, even when progress slows. Resilience isn't loud. It emerges quietly through repeated steps that honor your growth. Even on difficult days, you move gently forward instead of withdrawing. You also begin to understand that motivation is a result of action, not its cause. Motivation grows after you act, not before. This understanding liberates you from waiting for inspiration. You start relying on discipline, clarity, and intention. Emotions fluctuate, but your commitment remains steady. As momentum builds, your standards shift. You stop settling for alignment that is partial or inconsistent. You begin expecting more from yourself, not out of pressure, but out of recognition of your potential. Your actions reflect this new standard, and your life starts matching the higher version of your identity. Momentum invites synchronicity. When you move with purpose, life responds with opportunities, insights, and connections that support your growth. These moments aren't coincidences. They are reflections of your willingness to act. The more aligned your steps are, the more aligned your outcomes become. Building momentum also helps you detach from perfection. You learn that progress is rarely clean or linear. Growth is messy, unpredictable, and deeply human. When you embrace this truth, you remove the pressure that once held you back. Imperfection becomes part of your journey, not an obstacle to it. A single brave step can dissolve years of stagnation. It shows you that change doesn't require mastery. It requires willingness. When you witness the power of your own willingness, your inner landscape transforms. You stop doubting your ability to create change and begin trusting your ability to sustain it. Momentum reminds you that growth is cumulative. What seems small today becomes significant tomorrow. You begin appreciating the quiet victories, the decisions that no one sees, the moments when you choose courage privately. These invisible choices build a visible transformation. As momentum strengthens, you become more connected to your purpose. Your actions reflect your truth. Your path becomes clearer. You move not because you feel pressured, but because you feel aligned. Momentum becomes a natural expression of your evolving identity. Building momentum from a single brave step teaches you that progress is not about speed, it is about consistency. One step becomes two, and two becomes 10. Over time, you look back and realize the journey was created not by giant leaps, but by small, honest acts of courage that change the direction of your life. Fear often enters your life, disguised as certainty, the certainty that something will go wrong, that you are not ready, or that the unknown is dangerous. As you grow, you begin recognizing that fear is not a prophecy, but a perspective. It is a lens shaped by old experiences, not by your actual potential. When you shift this lens, the same situations that once intimidated you begin revealing paths forward instead of barriers. Seeing possibility begins with questioning the thoughts that fear once convinced you were facts. You start noticing how many of those thoughts came from past wounds, not present truth. The mind tries to protect you by repeating old warnings, but awareness allows you to separate real danger from imagined limits. This clarity weakens fear's authority and strengthens your capacity to see options. As you expand, you develop a new relationship with uncertainty. Instead of interpreting it as a threat, you begin seeing it as space for growth, exploration, and transformation. Uncertainty becomes a field of potential, not a trap. Your willingness to step into that space reveals courage you didn't know you had. When you stop avoiding what scares you, you start understanding it. Fear often exaggerates possibilities in the worst direction, but when you look directly at it, the distortion fades. You see that many of your fears were built from imagination, not experience. This realization dissolves the emotional grip fear once had on your decisions. Seeing possibility requires slowing down your reactions. Fear pushes you to assume, react, and retreat quickly. Possibility invites you to pause, observe, and choose intentionally. This pause creates room for alternatives you couldn't see when fear demanded urgency. Stillness becomes a doorway to clarity. As you shift your perspective, you begin identifying opportunities hidden inside challenges. What once felt overwhelming now becomes a chance to learn, strengthen, or transform. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" The challenge doesn't change, your interpretation does. Fear loses its dominance when you understand that discomfort is not a warning sign, but a sign of expansion. Growth often feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliarity triggers fear. Once you recognize this pattern, you stop running from discomfort and start using it as a compass. Discomfort points toward areas of potential, not danger. Seeing possibility also means reframing your past experiences. Instead of viewing past failures as evidence of weakness, you begin seeing them as training. Each experience taught you resilience, awareness, and emotional strength. These lessons give you tools fear cannot challenge. You stop fearing repetition because you know you've already learned how to rise. The shift from fear to possibility deepens when you stop anticipating worst-case outcomes. Fear trains your mind to imagine everything that could go wrong. Possibility trains your mind to recognize what could go right. When you practice this shift, your thoughts create space for hope, clarity, and creative solutions. As your perspective transforms, your emotional responses change. The situations that once triggered panic now bring curiosity. Instead of shutting down, you lean in. You examine what the fear is protecting and what truth lies beneath it. This curiosity breaks fear's spell and opens the door to insight. Seeing possibility helps you stop living through self-protection alone. You begin living through intention. Protection keeps you alive, but intention helps you live. You stop letting fear dictate your limits and start letting vision define your direction. This transition marks the beginning of inner freedom. You also begin recognizing how much fear once shaped your identity. Many labels you once accepted, anxious, unprepared, incapable, were not reflections of your potential, but reflections of how deeply fear influenced your choices. As you see more possibility, these labels fall away. Your identity expands beyond fear's boundaries. Seeing possibility requires trusting yourself in ways you once avoided. You stop relying solely on external validation. Instead, you lean into your inner wisdom, knowing that your judgment improves each time you make decisions from grounded awareness. Self-trust becomes a shield against unnecessary fear. As you overcome internal fears, you become more open to new experiences. You explore paths you once avoided. You engage in conversations you once feared. You pursue opportunities you once thought were beyond your reach. Each action strengthens the belief that possibility surrounds you. The fear-based version of you relied heavily on control. The possibility-based version of you embraces adaptability. You stop trying to predict every outcome and start focusing on your ability to navigate whatever arises. This flexibility becomes one of your greatest strengths, reducing fear's influence dramatically. Seeing possibility also reveals how limitations dissolve when you challenge them. Many limits existed only because you believed they did. When you attempt what you once avoided, you discover new abilities, new capacity, and new perspectives. Each breakthrough becomes evidence that fear was never the truth. This shift changes your relationship with your future. Instead of seeing the unknown as something to survive, you begin seeing it as something to shape. Your mindset shifts from avoidance to creation. You understand that your future is not predetermined. It expands in response to your courage. The more possibility you see, the more empowered your choices become. You stop choosing based on fear of loss and start choosing based on potential gain. Your decisions reflect your growth, not your insecurities. This alignment brings peace, clarity, and direction. As your life begins reflecting this new perspective, you realize that the world didn't become less frightening, you became stronger. You learned to see through the illusions that fear built, and in doing so, you gained the ability to shape your path consciously. Seeing possibility where you once saw fear is a profound transformation. It frees your mind, strengthens your spirit, and opens your life. When fear loses its voice, possibility becomes your guide, and from that guidance, your future begins to unfold in ways your old self could never imagine. Creating a future that matches your energy begins with understanding the power of your inner state. Your mindset, emotions, and intentions shape the direction of your life far more than external circumstances do. When your inner energy aligns with your desires, your outer world begins to shift naturally. This harmony between inner and outer creates a future that feels authentic rather than forced. As you become more aware of your energy, you start noticing how certain thoughts elevate you, while others restrict you. Each thought carries a frequency that influences how you perceive opportunities and challenges. When your energy is grounded, clear, and intentional, you attract experiences that reflect that state. When your energy is scattered or heavy, your path becomes clouded. Alignment becomes the bridge between your inner world and your future. Creating an aligned future requires honesty about what energizes you and what drains you. Some commitments once felt necessary, but now they exhaust your spirit. Some ambitions once felt meaningful, but now they feel misaligned. When you release these obligations, you free your energy to move in the direction of your truth. This release opens the path for a future that fits who you are becoming. You begin crafting your future by focusing on the quality of your daily choices. Small decisions shape your energy more than dramatic transformations. The conversations you engage in, the habits you maintain, the thoughts you nurture, each contributes to the direction your future takes. Your future is built quietly through these consistent, aligned actions. Creating a future that matches your energy requires letting go of comparison. When you measure yourself against others, you disconnect from your own path. Comparison pulls your energy toward external standards that don't reflect your inner truth. When you stop comparing, you regain the power to design your future based on your unique rhythm and purpose. As your energy shifts, you become more selective with your environment. You gravitate towards spaces that support your growth, inspire your creativity, and strengthen your peace. Environments that once felt comfortable begin to feel restrictive when they no longer match your evolving identity. Surroundings influence energy, and energy shapes your future. A future aligned with your energy is built through intention, not pressure. You stop pushing yourself into directions that don't resonate. Instead, you listen to the signals your body, intuition, and emotions send you. When something feels heavy or constricting, you examine why. When something feels expansive, you move toward it. This internal guidance becomes your compass. Creating an aligned future also means honoring your natural cycles. Some seasons of life emphasize growth and action, while others emphasize rest and recalibration. When you work against your natural rhythm, your energy becomes scattered. When you honor it, your progress becomes sustainable and fluid. Your future unfolds more naturally when you move with your own timing. Your future begins to take shape when you stop seeking permission to pursue what feels right. Many dreams remain unfulfilled because you waited for validation. But a future that matches your energy is not built from approval. It is built from authenticity. When you trust your direction, you stop asking whether you're allowed to change, you simply evolve. As your inner energy strengthens, your fears lose influence. Fear once guided your choices, creating a future based on avoidance rather than desire. Now you begin shaping your future through courage, openness, and clarity. You no longer let anxiety dictate your path. You let intention lead you. This shift transforms your relationship with possibility. Creating a future aligned with your energy requires engaging with challenges differently. Instead of seeing obstacles as signs to stop, you perceive them as invitations to rise. Each challenge helps refine your energy, deepening your resilience and strengthening your vision. Your future is shaped not by avoiding difficulties, but by evolving through them. Your relationship with time changes as you align with your energy. You stop feeling rushed, pressured, or behind. You understand that alignment matters more than speed. When your energy is right, progress becomes effortless. When your energy is misaligned, even small tasks feel draining. This awareness helps you move through life with clarity and balance. Creating a future that matches your energy means embracing your authenticity fully. You stop hiding parts of yourself to fit into spaces that cannot hold your truth. You begin expressing your ideas, feelings, and boundaries without shrinking. This authenticity becomes the foundation of every choice you make, shaping a future built from honesty. As you align more deeply, your vision becomes clearer. You start seeing what you truly want, not what you've been conditioned to want. This clarity removes distractions and self-doubt. You know which paths resonate with your spirit and which ones do not. Your future becomes a reflection of your inner certainty. Your alignment also strengthens your emotional stability. You no longer chase outcomes with desperation. You move with calm purpose. You understand that what is meant for you won't require self-betrayal or force. This stability helps you create a future that flows, rather than a future built on frantic effort. Creating a future aligned with your energy requires trusting the unseen. You may not always know how everything will unfold, but you trust the direction your inner wisdom points toward. This trust allows you to move forward even without complete clarity. Your faith in your path becomes stronger than your fear of the unknown. As your energy evolves, the people in your life change as well. Some drift away because they match an older version of you. Others enter because they resonate with who you are becoming. These shifts are not losses, they are adjustments. Your relationships reorganize themselves to match your new frequency. The more aligned you become, the more gratitude shapes your perspective. You begin appreciating your progress, your lessons, and your resilience. Gratitude lifts your energy and opens your heart to new opportunities. It helps you remain present while still moving toward your future with intention. Creating a future that matches your energy teaches you that you are not separate from your path. You are the creator of it. Your thoughts, choices, and internal state shape the world you walk into. When your energy aligns with your truth, your future becomes a natural extension of who you are at your core. A future that matches your energy is not something you chase, it is something you build from within. When your inner world becomes clear, grounded, and intentional, your outer world begins reflecting that clarity. Your future unfolds not by chance, but by alignment. And that alignment becomes the most powerful force in your evolution. Becoming the version of yourself that life has been waiting for begins with recognizing that your potential has always been present, even during the moments you doubted it. You start to see that life wasn't withholding anything from you, it was preparing you. Every challenge, pause, and redirection shaped the strength needed to step into who you're meant to become. This understanding becomes the foundation of your transformation. As you evolve, you realize that your highest self isn't created from pressure or perfection. It grows from awareness, honesty, and alignment. This version of you doesn't emerge through external validation. It emerges through inner truth. You learn to trust your instincts, honor your emotions, and follow the path that resonates deeply with your spirit. Stepping into this version of yourself requires shedding identities that were built from fear. You no longer define yourself through limitations, past wounds, or inherited expectations. These definitions once protected you, but now they confine you. By releasing them, you unlock the space to express who you truly are without restriction. The version of you that life has been waiting for is grounded, not reactive. You learn to observe situations with clarity rather than emotional haste. This grounded presence allows you to make decisions from wisdom instead of impulse. Your energy becomes calm, intentional, and steady, the kind of energy that supports growth instead of chaos. Becoming your higher self requires choosing alignment over comfort. Growth rarely feels familiar, but you learn to value expansion more than predictability. You stop clinging to old patterns simply because they feel safe. You begin moving toward choices that reflect your evolution rather than your history. As you step into this elevated version of yourself, your relationship with self-worth transforms. You stop seeking value externally and begin recognizing the strength within you. Confidence grows from acknowledging your resilience, your compassion, and your capacity to rise. You no longer beg for spaces at tables that don't honor your truth. You create your own space. This version of you understands the importance of discipline. Not discipline as force, but discipline as devotion. Devotion to your growth, your peace, and your purpose. You stay consistent even when motivation fades, because you trust the direction you're moving in. Consistency becomes an expression of self-respect. Becoming who life has been waiting for requires embracing vulnerability. You allow yourself to be seen without hiding behind masks of perfection. Vulnerability reveals your humanity, strengthens your connections, and opens the door to deeper authenticity. It becomes a bridge between who you were and who you are becoming. Your evolving self stops fearing change. Instead of resisting transition, You welcome it. Change becomes a sign of movement, not loss. You understand that life shifts when you shift, and that evolution is a continuous process. This acceptance softens the journey and helps you flow through uncertainty with grace. As you grow, your boundaries become clearer and stronger. You stop allowing energy that disrupts your peace to have authority in your life. You choose environments that nurture your growth rather than drain it. These boundaries protect the version of you that's emerging, allowing it to thrive without interference. The version of yourself that life has been waiting for is emotionally intelligent. You learn to respond consciously rather than react unconsciously. You observe your emotions without letting them dictate your identity. This emotional mastery gives you power not over others, but over your own inner world. As your self-awareness expands, you begin seeing your purpose more clearly. It isn't something discovered outside of you. It unfolds naturally as you align with your truth. You feel drawn to certain actions, certain people, certain directions. Not because of obligation, but because of resonance. Purpose becomes a feeling rather than an instruction. Stepping into your highest self requires courage to release relationships that conflict with your growth. You stop shrinking to maintain peace. You stop dimming your light to make others comfortable. You understand that true connection thrives in authenticity, not self-sacrifice. Letting go becomes an act of honoring your evolution. Becoming this version of yourself also involves honoring your inner voice above all others. You stop outsourcing your decisions to people who cannot see the full depth of your potential. You stop explaining your path to those committed to misunderstanding it. Your inner voice becomes your guide, your anchor, and your wisdom. Your future begins to align with your identity as your actions become more intentional. You stop drifting and start directing. You choose habits that match the person you are becoming. Each aligned action strengthens your new identity, making it easier to maintain and harder to lose. This elevated version of you embraces stillness. You understand that clarity is born in quiet moments, not constant activity. Stillness reveals truth, heals emotional wounds, and reconnects you with your inner guidance. It becomes a sanctuary where your highest self can grow without distraction. As you continue evolving, you discover that worthiness is not something earned, it is something recognized. You stop proving yourself and start expressing yourself. You realize that your existence alone makes you deserving of peace, abundance, love, and growth. This recognition becomes one of the most powerful transformations on your journey. Creating the version of yourself that life has been waiting for requires patience. Growth does not rush. You allow yourself to unfold at your own pace. You stop comparing your timeline to others. You trust that your path is unique and that your evolution will unfold exactly as it needs to. The more you embody your highest self, the more aligned your life becomes. Opportunities match your energy. Relationships reflect your growth. Your environment shifts to support your new level of awareness. Life begins responding to the version of you that leads with clarity instead of fear. Becoming the version of yourself that life has been waiting for is an act of coming home, home to your truth, your strength, your purpose, and your authenticity. This version of you has always existed. Now, you finally allow it to lead. A new start isn't something you wait for, it's something you choose. As you move forward from here, carry with you the understanding that every ending opens a doorway, every challenge shifts your direction, and every quiet decision shapes who you become next. Life is always offering you another chance to rise, realign, and rebuild from a clearer version of yourself. This journey isn't about becoming someone else, it's about uncovering the strength, clarity, and possibility that have always lived within you. Your next chapter begins the moment you believe you deserve better, and the moment you take one honest step toward the life calling your name. Your new beginning has already started. Now walk into it with intention, courage, and a heart ready to grow.